Hi there, Simon here. Did you know that cancer cells feed almost exclusively on two types of fuel? There's a little bit of controversy there, but I need to say almost exclusively, and you'll find out why soon. Also, your diet could be helping those cancer cells grow. Stay with me to the end, and I'll reveal what most doctors never mention about fighting cancer through nutrition. If you find this helpful, please comment, like and share. If you're able to, please consider supporting my GoFundMe to help keep creating these videos. Obviously, I'm fighting cancer here, so this is not something that I could potentially do indefinitely without a little bit of help, but if you're able to support my GoFundMe even a little bit, I would be immensely grateful. Otherwise, sharing this video, liking and commenting also help an awful lot as well. So, to understand why cancer only has two fuel sources primarily is basically down to metabolic therapy. And it's an approach to cancer treatment that targets how cancer cells use nutrients, especially glucose and glutamine. Now, this is not something that is news to the medical community. There was a scientist around about 100 years ago. His name was Warburg, and he has the Warburg effect named after him. So his name was Otto Warburg, and he found how cancer cells rely on fermentation even in the presence of oxygen, and they consume large amounts of glucose. Now, glutamine is another fuel source for cancer, but that's not one that he found about at a time. That's an amino acid. So whilst he was on the right track, it didn't really get him the recognition it deserved, because it was a major find, but because without knowing about also having to take care of glutamine, if you just took glucose away, the cancer could still grow. So yeah, he never really got the recognition he deserved for that. But that has since been discovered, and so this is a major breakthrough in how we see cancer as a metabolic disease. Now, since we know that glucose and glutamine are essentially the fuel sources for cancer, we can change our diet to a ketogenic diet and introduce things like fasting so that we can reduce those fuel sources. So the press pulse protocol made by Professor Seyfried, based on his research into the Warburg effect, is basically showing us how we can press cancer. So the way we press is by essentially eliminating sugars out of our diet. We get rid of the glucose out of our body, and the way we do that is we switch from sugars and carbs in our diet, and we get rid of those completely because we don't need them. There's no such thing as an essential sugar. There is no such thing as an essential carb. If our body needs any glucose, it will make it, and it doesn't need sugars or carbs to do that. It can do it on its own by using proteins or fats. Now, switching over to a protein and high fat diet essentially means we can press cancer by cutting off one of its fuel sources. That's the glucose. Pulsing is the other side of that. That's the glutamine. So that's an amino acid which cancer can also use as a fuel source. Now, that's slightly more difficult. There are supplements that can reduce glutamine, and by doing exercise, and there are certain drugs that seem to lower glutamine a bit. This is the pulse part of the phrase. Now, there are some specific glutamine antagonists that Professor Seyfried talks about. I won't go into them here because you can find out more about them from his videos. He's far more informed than I am. He's a proper professor. I'm just somebody who unfortunately got cancer and had to do a lot of research to try and find out different ways to treat it. So all of this is based on my research and my the science that I've looked up. But essentially, what Professor Seyfried has shown is that with using things like fasting, pressing cancer, getting rid of the glucose, pulsing the glutamine with certain drugs and antagonists, you can do a pretty good job of making cancer extremely vulnerable by using those vulnerabilities, the fact that it can only use glucose and glutamine as a fuel source. So there are limitations. There do seem to be some questions around the oncological community about why metabolic therapy isn't the silver bullet, and the challenges of implementing it to essentially just why if it was that easy, why wouldn't you just starve the cancer and we're done, everybody can do it? And that doesn't seem to be quite the case. So there may be some other things with cancer that we don't fully understand, but the one thing that I will say is that Professor Seyfried and his team at Boston College have put out a challenge to all scientists that essentially say that if you can find a fuel source other than glucose and glutamine that cancer can use, there is a cash reward. And so far, nobody has provided a scientifically repeatable test that shows where glucose and glutamine have been removed that cancer can still grow. So whilst it's not been proved 100% that there are only two fuel sources, nobody as yet has come forward to basically take this challenge up from Professor Seyfried and his team. So there is a little bit of controversy there. It's one of the problems that we also find with metabolic therapy is that a lot of the supplements and the off-labels that get used are used alongside conventional treatments, and so it's very easy to say that it's one and not the other that's actually curing the disease. But this is something that you're just going to have to read up on more yourself and, like me, make your own decisions about. I choose to believe that the metabolic theory of cancer and that cancer is a metabolic disease. Many in the medical community don't believe there's enough science and enough proof. I personally think, from what I have found and what I have read, there's more than enough proof, but that's just my opinion. Now, for me personally, metabolic therapy is something that's made quite a big difference to me in terms of my appetite. The one thing that I will say about it is that I don't eat many calories. I mean, I'm quite a big guy. I'm 13 and a half, 14 stone. I'm 6 foot tall. I'm reasonably in shape, but I eat maybe 1600 calories a day, and I'm never hungry. I do stick to a more ketogenic diet. I've got a meter that I use to measure my glucose and my ketones, and I generally stay down in the 2s to the 4s. I'd like to get down to below the 2s more, but I think it's because I'm possibly still not eating quite enough fat, which is something I need to test more. But it is something that I find relatively easy to do, and I would hope that many people who try it also find it relatively easy to do as well. I'm not saying it's going to be easy for everyone. There are some people that I know that have tried the ketogenic diet and really, really struggled. That they get the hunger pangs, they get side effects from it, and just all sorts. And I really feel for them, because I feel like almost, for me, it's just a little bit too easy, and that I must be doing something wrong. But yeah, I mean, it is one of those things that you'll just have to see how it goes for yourself, and sort of join our Cancer Warrior groups if you've got questions about what you should and shouldn't be eating, and what times, and what supplements you can take, and all the rest of it. So, like I say, for me, just using a Keto Mojo monitor to monitor my glucose and ketones shows me that I'm doing a reasonably good job of keeping in therapeutic ketosis. Now, just to recap what I said at the start of the video, the two main fuels for cancer that have been proved, as far as we know so far, almost exclusively, and I have to say almost because it's not 100% yet, but glucose and glutamine are the two fuel sources that influence cancer's metabolism. The way that we know this is from the experiments that Otto Warburg did, 100 years ago now. So you'd think science that's 100 years old, it's been around a while, people have had a chance to look at this and test this out. You'd think a few people would have been more familiar with it in the oncological community. I'll get my words out in the end. So, yeah, I mean, if you want to look into everything, look into Professor Seyfried's work about Otto Warburg and the Warburg effect, and how cancer is a metabolic disease. It essentially affects the mitochondria of a cell, causes it to switch from oxidative phosphorylation to utilising glucose and glutamine as a fermentation fuel source. And this is what identifies nearly all cancers as a cancer, is how the cell works has changed. So that pretty much is what you're never going to be told by your doctor. And so if you ever hear the words from a GP, a professor, or a scientist, an oncologist, when you ask the question, what should I be eating? And they tell you, you can eat what you like, I'm sorry to say, but that is not at all correct. If you're eating foods with lots of sugars and lots of glucose, you are essentially providing all the nutrients that cancer needs to grow as fast as it possibly can. And even scientists now that will not basically say that the metabolic therapy theory of cancer is correct will still agree that sugars and carbs can speed up the speed at which cancers grow. So it's not exclusively the wacko loony metabolic therapy group that are saying this. This is the genuine bona fide scientists on the other side of the coin as well, also saying it. So go and look it up, confirm it for yourself, make sure that it's something that you talk about with your doctor, your oncologist, and just know that if you only do the change in diet, that whatever other standard of care procedures that you may go with, that a really healthy metabolic diet can massively improve your outcome. And this is being found by so many people around the world now. You'll find more and more stories. Unfortunately, they're more anecdotal than they are scientific, but just more and more people are coming forward with stories about what they're doing and how it's working for them. So if you found this helpful, please do like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below if you've got any questions or if you've got any statements that you want to make about this. And if you are able to donate even a small amount to my GoFundMe, you'll find my links around my YouTube, in my descriptions, in my profile. Like I say, even a couple of pounds will help, because essentially the NHS do not support any kind of a metabolic program, and so I'm having to fund my metabolic therapy 100% privately. And so if you can help with that, I would be immensely grateful, and I will be ever grateful. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you got loads of value out of this video, and I shall see you in the next.